Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined as always by my good friend and co host, Mark Etheridge. We are here to talk week 2 in the SEC, another notable week, tournaments kind of
Yeah.
dominating the schedule, but some other interesting things happening as well. We will get to most of that and probably all of that. But first, I have to remind you this episode of Highway to Hoover and every episode of Highway to Hoover is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Thank you to our friends over at Academy Sports and Outdoors for being a fantastic partner, not only to Highway to Hoover, but also just to D1 Baseball in general. A hearty thanks to those folks over there. Mark, another interesting week in the books. You were home base this weekend. How did
Yeah.
that compare to being your opening weekend road trip where you were planes, trains, and automobiles? I guess it was just automobiles,
Yeah.
but it was a lot of time in an automobile. How did it compare?
Well, I got to see more than just the game that I was at, right? So that was nice. So got exposure to some different programs and different rosters and different players that really you've only read about, you haven't seen. So that part was interesting. Saw some really um we'll call it fascinating storylines kind of come to fruition. We wondered how Tennessee would play. They didn't have the greatest weekend. Kentucky went on the road and kind of stumbled a little bit at Evansville, losing a 1-0 game, which I didn't think anybody was going to hold Kentucky to scoreless. And then kind of looked around at other places, and Texas is really impressive. And I feel like they're one of the best teams in the country, and certainly getting to watch a bunch of these teams. And Vanderbilt hits home runs now. I mean, come on. So you have all these different things that I had really only just kind of read about or seen highlights of that I got to watch pretty much. I got to watch a lot. I got to watch some of everyone who was broadcast. Sorry, Missouri, and also got to watch some good finishes too, because there were some close games that came down to the stretch, and you got to see how they handle pressure and who made the big plays down the stretch. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's one of the few weekends I'm going to have at home, so it was nice to kind of set up the multi screen and kind of peruse different deals. And as one got less interesting, you're switching it around. So it was kind of one of those weekends.
Yeah, you got to bank up those home weekends while you can. That is
Yeah.
absolutely for sure. Mark, let's start. I hate to start off with a series loss, but I do think based on kind of the reaction around the nation, maybe the biggest story in
Yeah.
the SEC this weekend was Tennessee losing 2 out of 3 against Kent State. They won the opener in walk-off fashion. Tyler Myatt walk-off home run in a 4 to
Yep.
3 victory over Kent State. Then took losses by 2-1 and 9-5 scores. And I kind of feel like the interesting thing about me to this series is, I mean, is one that they nearly got swept. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, they're 2 runs away from being swept, and then the issues they had in games 1 and 2 were different than the issues they had in game 3. In games one
100%
and two, it was
offense.
offensive production, like just everything felt difficult. And then in game 3, it was on the mound. They suffered most of their issues, and so
They
I
did.
I come I come away with it thinking, first of all, like Kent State is probably just really good. Like that's probably a mid-major to watch that you're not going to want them to show up in your regional. Could they be the Murray State of this year or the Oral Roberts of this year? Like maybe.
Mhm.
So I think there's that. But that being said, Tennessee is supposed to beat Kent State, kind of regardless of how quality a version of Kent State this is. So I thought this would be a competitive series. We saw Kent State play LSU well last week,
Yeah.
so I kind of thought, okay. I mean, you were there. I
Yeah.
kind of thought like, okay, yeah, they'll compete. Like there'll be a competitive game or two, but I certainly didn't imagine Tennessee losing the series, and yet here we are.
I feel like Kent State has a really competitive offense. They play aggressive. They've got some big sticks, can hit the ball out of the park. They look like they're offensively, they look like a really good club. What surprised me is how they were able to hold down Tennessee's offense. That was the big surprise. I felt like they would score. I mean, just watching them Monday, I mean, that LSU, while it was midweek pitching, I mean, it's LSU. They've got some dudes, man. And Kent State was able to hold their own and really be competitive in that game. And I felt like maybe there'd be a 10-8 game or something like that. But that really wasn't the way that the way that this went down. Kent State was, granted, it was cold. It wasn't great conditions to hit in, and all those kinds of things. If you really want to reach for an excuse, you can grab one, it and it's teetering on reason versus excuse. But anyway, it's there. But I did feel like that Tennessee, just the talent would take over, and they really were not able to just exert their will, and that's a bit, I guess, concerning. I know it's week 2, but this is, I mean, remember how Tennessee finished at home last year where they just couldn't win at home, and here they are already dropping a home series to a mid-major that, while we respect and we feel like it's gonna be a pretty good team, they're not as talented as the teams that are gonna, roll into Lindsey Nelson later in the year. So that part, it's early, but you do have to kind of wonder, right? Because everybody's looking. There's a huge spotlight. Tony's gone. Is Tennessee going to fall apart, right? And while we don't think they're going to fall apart, there is some concern after this weekend that they're not going to put together full weekends. And if you don't do that, you're you're going to be in danger of losing every series, regardless of how talented you are. So, yeah, that was big for me. I feel like that while we all are, I guess, aware of how talented Tennessee is, they still are replacing a ton of production, and there's still a lot of new faces and key roles. And when you're in that situation, it takes some time to figure this out. So on one hand, I feel like, yeah, you got your mulligan out of the way, and you're going to figure this thing out. But they go to Arlington next weekend, 3 quality opponents. I think we'll learn a lot there. No weather to worry about. But the other part of that is, okay, well, everybody is concerned this is going to be a step back. Is this the precursor to let us know it's coming? And time will tell. But it does it does kind of reinforce all those we'll just say interesting bystanders who are kind of hoping that Tennessee takes a step back.
That kind of leads me to my final thing on this was to talk about how much of a harbinger we feel like this might be of things to come. And I should clarify first that the answer is we don't know.
We
Like
don't know.
that's the thing, is we just don't know. But I will say, you know, the if you held my feet to the fire and said no, you have to give me an answer, I would say that of the issues they had, the strike throwing on the mound worries me the most.
Yeah.
And that's because that tends to be contagious in a weird way. Um, and to walk 7 dudes and hit 4 others in the finale today, in a game you had to have, is a little bit worrisome for me, because those again, those things, A, tend to be contagious, and B, oftentimes are not just like a whoops, that was a weird game.
Yeah.
Like they tend to be symptomatic of some other things, and maybe it's not. But again, if you're holding my feet to the fire, that's the direction I go on. If I'm worried about any part of it, it's the strike throwing part of it, and that's just like and I'm not saying anything you don't know, but that's kind of a non-negotiable once you get into SEC play. If you start walking people in SEC play, you're kind of
Yeah.
toast.
You're gonna
Like
give up
they're
crooked numbers. Yeah.
right there. I mean, they're obviously talented enough. I say toast, like they'll be a good team, but I don't think, I'm not worried about Tennessee totally collapsing. But I'm just saying, when you're comparing them to the other teams that fancy themselves as high
Hmm.
end SEC teams, like that could be a difference maker if the strike throwing continues to be an issue.
Yeah. I think that's a fair critique. Of course, they open up Arlington next week with UCLA. So, they go out and get a great pitching performance and swing the bat well and beat UCLA. And then, even if they split the next 2, all is forgiven, right? And everything will be, quote, back to normal. But now the pressure's on, and they'll go into that Friday with even a bigger spotlight on how they're going to perform.
Let's move on to a team that did have a great weekend, and that was Auburn, and that was where I was at Globe Life Field. Wins over Kansas State, Florida State, and Louisville. And I guess the biggest big picture takeaway I have here is that it appears the early season funk this lineup was in is over, for lack of a better way of putting it. I
Yeah.
mean, 5 runs in the opener against Kansas State, okay, that's a decent number of runs, but not an outburst. But then 8 against Florida State, and then 10 on Sunday today as we record this against Louisville. And it wasn't just the run scoring output. Like it was a lot of good at bats. It was a lot of hard hit balls, some of which were caught. So a lot of loud outs. And then it was guys that, you know, it wasn't just that, okay, Chase Fralick is carrying this thing, or, choose your veteran X or Y is
Love
carrying this
Terrell.
offense.
Yeah.
Bob Terrell, right? It was Ethan Bingaman stepping up and
Yeah.
and being really, really impactful. And today he was the star of the show in Sunday's win, 2 home runs, the second of which landed in the second deck of left field. For a guy who's really not that big. I mean, I think he's listed at 5'11", but I interviewed him after the game, and I'm shaking my head no for those not watching. Like, not the biggest guy around, but he certainly packs a punch. And they're still waiting on some guys to come
Yeah.
around. Todd Clay is really fighting it. Cade Ballou is really fighting it. So it's still not perfect, but they are getting some new faces and some role players to step up and perform in a way that they needed after that kind of slow start. Because for a while there, it was kind of just Bristol Carter, and then and that
Hmm.
was kind of it. So that was obviously, to me, that's I'll toss it over to you with
Hmm.
this. To me, that was the biggest headline of the Auburn weekend, and going 3-0 at Globe Life.
Yeah. Bristol Carter's definitely really, really raised his game this year. I mean, he's looks like a different player. Uh, The other thing I would mention, and then I have a question for you, but with with how they pitched it, especially on the mound, Marciano was really good. Jackson Sanders, he had a rough first inning and then just kind of, he morphed into Nolan Ryan or somebody else who's starred in that ballpark, or at least that for that franchise that plays in that ballpark. Then and they pitched. Petrovic was good today. I mean, it was
Yeah,
fine. I mean, and Griffin Graves is still, he's still out, and when he comes back, you're assuming he's going to take one of those weekend starter spots, and that means, I mean, goodness, you've got another bullet either in long relief or to piggyback or whatever you want to do, or even help bridge to the closer. So I really like where they are, but I guess my question for you is, okay, Chris Rembert is going to come back in the next week or so. McCrane's playing really well at second. Obviously, Rembert's going to play. What's that lineup going to look like? And then you got Madrigal, who could be back in April. They're going from a lineup that maybe has some questions to one that has more answers, right? And the questions are, where are you going to fit them all in?
yeah, it's a good problem to have. Certainly, given that the struggles they were having this time a week ago, offensively. Yeah, Brandon McCrane was a name I failed to mention. Was really a star of the show this weekend. It's not only that he performed; it's also just the way he plays. He kind of plays with his hair on fire. And I wrote a story about him that you can go read on the site about him, and just that he's a rare he's a rare breed in that he was a guy who took a non-injury red shirt and then
Mm-hmm.
stuck around the program. Like, most guys take non-injury red shirts and they kind of start looking around, looking for the exit door. And he
Right.
stuck around. And Butch Thompson gave me a great quote about how much it meant to him that Brandon McCrane decided, no, this is where I want to be, and I think these people have my best interest at heart, and so
Right.
I'm going to stick with them. Now, to your question, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the most obvious thing is Brandon McCrane comes out of the lineup, because we could just talk through it. Like, you could maybe move McCrane to, could he play third base, and then you just move Guevara to shortstop full time?
Yeah. Maybe.
Todd Clay is struggling, so it's, maybe it's just, time for him to get a break and maybe be more of a role player. Um, you know, then Madrigal comes back and it takes first base out of play, because maybe that's part of it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's
He's
McCrane.
DHing probably to start with anyway. until he
Right.
gets full speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's McCrane at first base. But then you have the issue of, well, right now it kind of seems like, Bingaman is playing a decent bit of first base. If he's
Yeah.
not playing first base, he's playing right. And so Bub and Bristol are going to play. So
Yeah.
that leaves one outfield spot. And so
Steal.
it's
Right.
got to be Bingaman. And so then, that's the point you're making, right? Is it's like
Yeah.
they have all these chess pieces they're trying to move around the chessboard, and suddenly they've gone from a lineup that felt like, gosh, do we have, do we
Mhm.
have,
Enough. Right.
enough, to being like, gosh, now we're going to have some guys who are going to be kind of disappointed they're not playing more. Again, it's a good problem to have, but it's one they're going to have to
It's
address.
coming. Yeah.
It is coming down the pike. But I trust that they'll figure out some, especially as they do have a couple of guys who are scuffling right now. So maybe if Rimbert comes back on the early side of the prognosis, maybe it's not such a bad thing for a couple of those players to just kind of cool their jets a little bit and maybe get back in the lab,
Hmm.
and take some pressure off whatever it is. Maybe that is just the ultimate answer here for now. But man, what a luxury to have that you feel like, as Butch put it, that Brandon McCrane is playing like he doesn't want to come out of the lineup.
I mean,
So
we call what he did condoning.
yeah, that's
Right.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Just take a year, get bigger, stronger, faster, better, and then come back and kick ass.
yeah, yeah. I've got a story out too that you can read on the website now about the first base position and how, like, when Eddie Madrigal went down, it was kind of like, oh boy. I mean, now, because we're now
Yeah.
either going to have to play somebody out of position, or we're just not going to be we're losing something offensively. And now it kind of looks like, their options at first base are pretty good.
Yeah.
And maybe, Madrigal is going to come back, sure. But until then, like, I think they're going to be just fine
Yeah.
with what they have going there. So I just kind of wrote a story about that. But yeah, so they're really rolling right now. And the other thing I made a note of that I wanted to bring up is that, yes, they got good stuff from all three starting pitchers to varying degrees, but it might just be the case that Jake Marciano just might be a real dude.
Hmm.
Um, like, we've talked about what he lacks a little bit. Like, he's not pumping 97 in there. He's not 6'5" and 225 and out there, he doesn't look like a workhorse, um, but he's really good. Like, it's pinpoint command, and the pinpoint command helps everything else play up. Like, his fastball does appear faster. It's 90, 91. Maybe it'll touch a two, but because he knows exactly where to put it and he can put it there, like, it really does help everything play up. And it's a varied repertoire. He's going to be someone that teams are going to have to reckon with. And in this big picture conversation we've been having about Auburn for a long
Yeah.
while now, about, like, is there a Friday guy? Like, I know we've said this about Sam Dutton. We said this about Tommy Vale at various points. So maybe there is a little bit of fool's gold in there, but I came away from Marciano's start on Friday, more convinced than ever that this might be the guy. It doesn't look like a Friday guy necessarily,
Hmm.
but I think he might be that guy.
And then if Griffin Graves comes back and they've
Right.
got a 1-2 punch and Sanders is on Sunday, then this goes from a huge question mark coming into the year to one of the best rotations in the conference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Yeah, Griffin Graves is gonna, and that was, when I asked Butch about him just making the decision to make Marciano the Friday guy, like, he mentioned that it came down to he and Griffin Graves. Then, of course, when Griffin Graves went down, it obviously made the decision
Hmm.
a lot easier. But it will be interesting to see what they decide to do. Because let's also not forget, like, they still have Andreas Alvarez and Christian
Yeah.
Chatterton knocking around out there,
Yeah.
like, two guys that started postseason games, or at least
Hmm.
Alvarez did. I forget if Chatterton did or not, but Alvarez certainly did and pitched well. Um, so yeah, like, it's not even like you could just be like, well, Petrovic just moves to midweeks. Well, maybe not. you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
we will see. One other note on them too is they do the Auburn does seem to have landed on some bullpen combinations they like in both Friday games so far. After Marciano, they've used Whalen and Brewer back to back,
Hmm.
and then in both Saturday games, after Sanders, they've used Jet Johnston and Ryan Hetzler, and that is interesting. And given how pitching centric with Butch and Coach Tiefert and Scott Foxhall being there, like, you feel like nothing happens by accident on the mound for them. Like I doubt Butch Thompson looked at the box scores and was like, "Huh, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed that."
Yeah,
So it
intentional. Yeah.
does feel like they've landed on their combinations they would ideally like to use to close out some games, and so far so good on that front.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to mention is friend of the program, Lance Cormier, his son LJ. How about him coming in as a unheralded freshman? He's pumping 88, 89 mile per hour fastballs and missing bats with them. Now the controls got to come around a little bit, but that ball is jumping, man. It is lively. And from someone who really wasn't expected to have a role, as he gains experience and gains maturity and strength, and he's somebody he's gonna play a role this year.
Yeah, certainly seems like it. And you're right. Like, his first few batters he faced, it was really impressive stuff. And you're right. Eventually, like the command just, you know,
Hmm.
he kind of lost it a little bit, and they ended up having to bring Garrett Brewer into that game. But yeah, you're right. He's kind of elbowed his way into some innings here, and we'll see what he can do with it.
Yeah,
Let's talk about LSU, Mark.
yeah,
Now you'll have to take a little bit of a lead here because
I
I
got it.
was at
Hmm.
3 games a day this weekend. I didn't see a whole lot of this, but my big picture takeaway from LSU's 3-0 weekend in Jacksonville is ho hum is kind of
Yeah,
what it is, because
they're
that's
really
what
good.
it felt like. It's just that they were clearly the best team there. Their
Yeah.
games, I guess, with the exception of the opening game, was kind of, I guess, vaguely competitive early on, but then LSU just ran away with it. It just felt like, with the exception of maybe the first few innings of that first game, that they just weren't really even pushed all that much.
Well, Joe, I got to watch all three of these games on D1Baseball.com, and let me tell you, it was a great experience. Uh, One of the things I'll mention is that watching them Monday, I got the impression that this is not a fun lineup to pitch to. They take a lot of pitches, they hit strikes, or they swing at strikes and take balls, and they're deep um, throughout the lineup. And reading Bradley Smart, who had coverage of this event this weekend, reading one of his stories, I believe it was the Indiana coach he interviewed, and he basically said the same thing I was thinking heading into it, and that happens so rarely that I get to feel smart that someone in the arena echoes what I was thinking. But it is, they're really hard to pitch to because they've got guys throughout the lineup, and they've got guys 10 through 13 or 14 that can hurt you as well. The question I had on the mound, or a question I had for them, is just what was the mound going to look like? Certainly, we all love the stuff and love the options, but how good were they going to be at out collecting? And I do feel like there's some, maybe some opportunities in the bullpen to throw more strikes, but the stuff's incredible. If those guys figure it out and are in the zone more, this is a team that can win the whole thing. And that's right now they're playing as well as anyone in the country. Certainly, they're on the short list with UCLA and maybe Texas. But that would be my three right now that feel like they're playing as well as anybody. And that's the thing about LSU is they replaced a good bit. But I think the offense is better, certainly more physical this year. And I think it's going to be longer. And they're playing good defense. And if the pitching, Kason Evans has been good, not great. William Schmidt was really good today on Sunday. He wasn't as good last week, but he was in the zone today and looked like what they want. And then their guys behind them, right? So I feel like LSU is in such a good position. It's going to be, they get Northeastern for 2 games next weekend. I think Dartmouth is the other team there. It's kind of one of those 3-team deals. Um, so that's, Northeastern was good last year. I don't know how good they are this year, but that's decent competition. But I think it's, now we're just itching to see them against an SEC team. And I think they opened with Oklahoma, if I remember that right. So that could be just a massive opener because, LSU certainly is playing as well as anyone in the country. And Oklahoma had the best weekend of anyone in the country last week. So collision course, and sign me up for that.
Yeah, same here. I got asked about it a decent bit on my various radio hits last weekend,
Mhm.
like looking ahead to LSU, Oklahoma. So yeah, a lot of
With Cam
anticipation.
Johnson, you
Yeah,
know,
that's right. That's
with
right. That'll be
LSU
a nice
ties.
little
Yeah,
subplot. Yeah,
right.
interesting stuff. Yeah, my other kind of big picture takeaway from LSU, what like just keeping up with the results more so than watching it, was that everybody is hitting. Like they
Yeah.
don't like
Mhm.
every. It feels like every lineup right now has like at least a couple of guys who are just like, yeah, just waiting on them to come around. We think they
Yeah,
will though. But like the LSU lineup is like, if you really want to nitpick, it's like, okay, Derek Curiel maybe hasn't totally gotten going yet, but
right.
it's not like he's hitting 100, right? Like
Mhm.
he's hitting in the high 200s, so like it's
And
not.
he's gonna hit,
And
right?
right, and like there's zero doubt about what he's going to end up doing. But everyone else is hitting 300, 400. They've got some guys still above 500. Jake Brown has been awesome so far. Nobody above
Stable
500
stuff.
anymore, I guess. But yeah, but
Yeah,
he's been incredible. When they're hitting like that, I mean, it's you don't need to be. They've hit well enough to where they've been able to have situations where, okay, Casey Evans was just okay opening weekend,
right,
or Cooper Moore wasn't as good this weekend as he was last weekend, but they were fine. They're able to survive so much, and give their pitching staff time to sort out, because they're hitting the way they are, and that's probably the way they drew it up. you know, they know
right.
what they're doing there, as it turns out. A couple of other series I think that are worth like maybe just digging into just a little bit.
Okay.
The first is, and we'll touch on every series, but the end at the end here we'll do some quick hitters, but a couple more I think that are worthy of a little more extended discussion. One is Penn and A&M, and A&M sweeps the series, so the result is great. And I have a lot of respect for Penn. I think they're probably pretty good again. Like they're the class of the Ivy League right now. Them in Columbia. Um, but man, I don't know what to think of the A&M lineup now, because they look like the best lineup in the country against Tennessee Tech, and now it's either that Tennessee Tech's pitching is way worse than I thought, and I guess I didn't know how good they were or not, but whatever I thought they were, maybe they're worse than
Yeah,
that. Or Penn, it pitches great apparently, like, or that could be the case, or more likely this was just like a weird weekend. But and I get that, okay, they were without, Caden Sorrell wasn't hitting, like he's got stitches on his hand. Chris Hakopian's got his back issue, but still, like to score two runs each in the first two games of the series was just such a shocking result considering what we saw the first weekend. So I'm left not really sure what to make of it. I'm still very confident, but which is closer to being kind of the true result here, and I'm not as
yeah.
sure of. I just don't know what to make of it.
Well, I'm gonna step out on a limb here.
Okay.
I didn't watch either of those games, or any of those three games. I'm going to guess that a home run reliant offense ran into an inbound wind, and that really limited their offensive production.
Well,
And you need to win different ways, and A&M is really built towards hitting the ball in the gaps and over the fence. And if the wind knocks them down, holds them up, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's just kind of the vibe I got. I watched a little bit of Ole Miss today, and they had the same thing. Um, Udermark hit one that would have been out of the Grand Canyon, and it was caught in left field just because the wind knocked it down. You just kind of get those kind of games, and on teams like that that are built for the home run, you get a weather day like that, and it can really cripple your offense. And we've all seen it, right? I mean, Missouri is a place where the wind really can impact games. Cold weather games. We've all seen it that opening weekend. Nobody wants to go to Mizzou because the wind's going to blow in, and all these big, strong home run hitters don't hit home runs. I feel like that could have something to do with it. But on the other side, they pitched really well. Now, maybe they had the same benefit, you know, certainly pitching friendly conditions. But boy, I mean, they've this is 2 weeks in a row. Those three new weekend starters have been lights out. Now, next week they go to Arlington. You're not going to have any kind of weather conditions there because it's going to be inside. So we'll get a true evaluation of what this team looks like. But I do feel like it's one of those things that you can't control the weather, and you need to be able to manufacture runs and win games in different ways. And if I was A&M, that would concern me a little bit, that you've got to find a way to manufacture some stuff if you can hit the ball out of the park. Because sometimes the pitchers are just going to, they're going to pitch you a certain way, and you can't hit the ball out of the park, and you've got to do some different things. So that would be my takeaway after on A&M after this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you might be onto something there. We certainly will see tougher competition due
Hmm.
up soon for A&M. So we'll find out a lot more moving forward. I also thought it was interesting. Kentucky wins its series against Evansville, but you
Yeah,
alluded to it in the open. A 1-0 loss in the finale of that series.
on
Like,
game three. Yeah, I just didn't
right.
see that coming.
Yeah, and like I do some, for those who don't know, I do some freelance work at the Missouri Valley Conference. I happen to know the pitcher they faced in Game 3, Kevin Reed. It's pretty good,
Hmm.
but still,
Oh,
you don't expect them to get shut out. So
yeah.
um, eh, I'm of a couple minds. One is that the pitching has been very good for Kentucky.
Hmm.
It's been quite good, and the offense superficially, like if you look at the numbers, like looks pretty good. But certainly, if you can be shut out in the third game of a series from Evansville, it does show that, um, like you can get God, and everybody can get God. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't have expected that in that series, and um, I think everyone's going to jump to the conclusion of, well, this is what happens when you don't have Tyler Bell, and I don't think it's that simple, obviously, but I do think it is a reminder that, oh yeah, this is a lineup that is working without what was going to be its most important piece,
Hmm.
um, and that's just this. I think I say all that to say, let me land the plane here. Um, I think this is a type of game that can happen when you're lacking a centerpiece in your lineup in the way that Kentucky is. This is maybe the result of being without that centerpiece in Tyler Bell.
Yeah, think you're onto something there. And it's kind of to echo the point that we made about A&M. Kentucky is a program that's built on being versatile offensively. Do whatever it takes offense, right? And certainly, man just said that probably in most of the interviews we've had with him. I mean, it's what they preach, and I feel like they are one of the least likely teams to get shut out, um, because they can do so many things well. So I do, that would be an interesting game to go back and study and just kind of see what happened, because certainly Tyler Bell would have made an impact. Maybe they don't get shut out. Maybe they force extras and win it, or whatever. He is that kind of difference maker. But yeah, I mean, you give up one run against Evansville, you should win the game, especially on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I feel like, um, while they're pitching fine or better than fine, the offense, when you go through something like that, maybe it was bad conditions, I don't know, but it is a bit troubling because they also dropped the midweek game, right? So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's it wasn't a great week, but the other thing I'll point out is they are the only SEC team that's gone out and played two road series like this. I mean, there's some teams that play away from home, but you don't go on the road 2 weeks like Kentucky has done. And if you do that, you're going to drop a game or two, and they certainly did today.
Yeah, yeah. Homestands coming up for Kentucky, but they've just had the one midweek game at home so far, and unfortunately for them, they dropped it. But
Hmm.
they do have more home games here coming up. All right, Mark. I'm going to round up just like the rest of the results here. It's a lot of
Okay.
relatively non-competitive series, and then let's kind of cherry pick some interesting things we can grab from. We don't have to talk about all of them
Yeah.
necessarily, but at least some from some of these here. So deep breath. Here we go. South Carolina won
Hmm.
games against Navy and Air Force, lost one to Army in a salute to service tournament, I think is what they
Yeah.
called it, something along those lines. Bama swept Rhode Island. Oklahoma swept Coppin State, and who boy,
Yeah.
I hope that
Swept doesn't cover it.
yeah, I
This is
condolences to
built to
Coppin
ask.
State. Yeah, who man, did Coppin State score a run this weekend?
They might have got one.
I'm not
Yeah.
entirely sure they did. I'm looking this up as we. They got one. They were outscored. Joe's going to do quick math, which is always dangerous. 46, 57 to 1 in 3 games. Um, but that check cashed, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Oklahoma over Coppin State, Missouri over New Haven, uh, D1 debutante New Haven,
Yeah.
Arkansas over Xavier.
Hmm.
That there was some interesting stuff there. Texas over Michigan State.
Yeah.
Those were all sweeps as well. Florida sweeps Kennesaw State. Georgia sweeps Samford. Mississippi State swept Delaware. Vanderbilt swept Marist, and Ole Miss swept Missouri State. And that last one might have been the closest of the three of or
Hmm.
closest of all these sweeps. That all three of those games were at least relatively competitive.
Competitive.
But
Yeah.
of all that stuff here, Mark, what do you want to grab onto and talk a little more about?
Yeah, well, certainly Georgia just absolutely demolished Samford, who we thought was going to be, at least competitive with them. He might even steal a game, right? But no, I mean, Georgia just absolutely demolished them, and they did it without Kenny Ishikawa, who didn't play. He's listed week to week, but you're basically losing two players, because he's a pitcher and a center fielder. Um, but yeah, Georgia's super impressive, winning 22-0 on Sunday.
Yeah.
So in 7 innings. Another one, I saw Alabama last week, also a doubleheader on Saturday, and they threw Zane Adams and Miles Upchurch, and they were really good. And again, against Rhode Island this week, they were both really good again. So you know, it's a team with potential. I'm not sure how good they're going to be, as competition increases, but boy, with those two guys on the mound, they're really good. And Justin LeBron has already hit 5 home runs. I think he's got like 8 stolen bases already. I mean, that's not always two stats that go together, but they are for him. I guess another one I would call out, I think Florida was impressive for me over Kennesaw State. Liam Peterson, who didn't really throw all that great opening weekend, came back and he was sharp. He had a no-hitter into the fifth, only gave up one hit, was really good. And Aiden King he matched him, right? Was really good again, game two. Um, Florida, they lost opening day and they've won every game since. They seem to have kind of got that one out of their system and flushed it and have been really good. And I think the other one I would comment on, I'll leave some for you, but the other one I would comment on is Mississippi State played. They got really good starts in game one and game two. Sunday starter Charlie Foster he wasn't terrible, but he really wasn't, number 4 team in the nation. Some weekend starter good. And Duke Stone in relief was. He pitched really well. So I'm wondering, we'll see if there's a switch there as they go into next weekend, because guess who they play in game 3 next weekend? The number 1 team in the nation, the UCLA Bruins. So certainly an opportunity to make a change there if you want to put your best foot forward. But I mean, Foster he wasn't terrible, but and he's been really good in the fall and preseason. I do wonder though if maybe you switch his role for a week, or you move him to midweek, or you piggyback him or something else, and just kind of see if that helps, because he's a better pitcher than what he's shown so far.
Yeah, a couple things for me. One is, I'll give some credit to Bama for their sweep over Rhode Island, because while I am certainly not an expert on Rhode Island's roster, two things. One, that was a regional team last year,
Mm-hmm.
and
3
B,
seed. Mm-hmm.
right, and Bradley Smart, who did their fall report, is pretty convinced they're going to be a contender to win the A10 title. And okay, the A10 is the 18th best conference in the country,
Right.
so like I get it, but this was not like a rollover team.
It wasn't Coppin State.
Right. No
They're
offense
catching strays tonight.
State.
Sorry,
That's
guys.
right. But yeah, so that was a team that is a competent team that Alabama took care of business with relatively without incident. So impressive stuff there. Similarly, I will say now New Haven is new to Division One, but after Missouri, after losing that game to Mount St. Mary's, which I'm not hand waving away, like still concerning,
It happened, right?
but since that, the midweek loss to FAU, but okay, FAU is a solid program.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have taken care of business in the games they're supposed to take care of business in since then. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that means anything. I'm just pointing it out to say that like we all kind of, it's very people are very quick to get their jokes off about Missouri when things go poorly, but they have taken care of their business against the teams they're supposed to the last 5 games. We'll see if that leads to something else in the future, but
Yeah.
just worth noting.
And
Uh,
Mizzou's Tyler Macon is absolutely impossible to get out. Apparently, I didn't see what he
yeah,
did today, but looking yesterday, he was hitting almost 600. I mean, just
yeah,
in the leadoff spot, just killing it.
he went 3 for 4 today.
Ah, well, they're
So,
going up.
so yes, he is swinging the bat really, really well. So just want to point that out. I know people will think that's a ridiculous thing I'm saying, but they have taken care of their business. Arkansas again, like
Yeah.
Xavier's a good team. I mean, they
Hmm.
won a series against East Carolina. A missed opportunity for Xavier. They had some opportunities here to maybe come away with the game. I think the one thing is, I would still. I know patience is in short supply in SEC baseball, but like the Hunter Dietz thing is going to
Yeah.
take time. Like it didn't necessarily go
Yeah.
great for him again.
Yeah.
Like, but we're,
I
we're just
watched.
gonna have to.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. What
Yeah.
was kind of your thoughts?
His first two innings were really good, and third inning it started to unravel a little bit, and maybe he didn't. He wasn't able to pitch through it like you wanted him to. But the stuff is it's there. So yeah, you definitely want to keep rolling him out there because if next start it's 4 innings, right, instead of two, and then it's 6 innings or whatever that adjustment ends up being. The other thing I would point out is on Sunday or game three for them, Colin Fisher has turned into a dude, man. I mean, in the final game, he threw complete game 8 innings, and they run ruled him, but one hit shutout. He had 11 strikeouts. I mean, you can't pitch any better than that. I guess you could give up 0 hits instead of one. Okay, that's your margin, right? He had a one heck of a game. So you got that on Sunday. So with Dietz on Saturday, I mean, and Dietz's stuff is better than Fisher. He didn't have the pitchability yet. It's just, and the other thing I would point out with Arkansas, Cam Kojal continues to get big hits. Aloy continues to get big hits. I mean, these returning guys who are back, um, they're really leading that offense like you want them to do as returning. They had all that success last year with a great offense and lost a ton of those guys. And having them back is really, I mean, that's the key, for me, for their offense is you know, those players who have been through it and have all those battle scars that they're able to lead by example and also by producing. And certainly they're off to a great start.
Texas in their sweep over Michigan State. Dylan Volantis in Sunday's game, 7 shutout innings, so off to a really strong start there. So far, so good on the Dylan Volantis as a starter. I don't
So
even
far,
call it an
so great.
experiment. Yeah, yeah, it's not even called. You can't even call it an experiment even anymore because
No,
it's just going so well.
he's killing it.
So yeah, Vanderbilt their sweep over Marist. Two things you mentioned. Vanderbilt hits home runs now. To put some numbers on it, they have hit 22 home runs through 8 games. That's a pretty good rate.
Yeah,
They play in the tournament in Las Vegas this coming
yeah,
weekend. They will play UC Irvine, Arizona, and Oregon. It looks like Arizona is not very good, but UC Irvine and Oregon looks like they are both good.
right,
And in Arizona has talent, so like it's not
right.
like that's nothing. So I think we'll learn quite a bit more about Vanderbilt as they get into that tournament, and then Ole Miss and Missouri State. Um, I Missouri State is very talented. Like they're probably in the handful of the most talented non-power conference, non-Sun Belt teams in the country. And I thought
Hmm.
Ole Miss did a really nice job just kind of handling their business. Like, yes, they were competitive games, but if Missouri State ends the season in a regional, I'm not going to be surprised. Like, I
Right.
think there's that kind of quality there. So this is just kind of you got the sweep, and we can sit here and kind of like go box score by box score and nitpick a little bit and come up with reasons why it wasn't as impressive as it should have been. And I would just kind of dismiss that out of hand and say, look, you take the sweep and you move on because I do think Missouri State is a good team. So I'm not. I think you just take the sweep and just be happy with it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. All right, Mark. I think that's an episode. Another good week. We got another one coming up. Week 3 is another strong week of tournaments and non-conference series. Before we get to the, I don't want to say dreaded, but the usual week 4, where
Yeah.
everybody kind of takes a little bit of a step back ahead of conference play, and that's understandable. So, had a lot of fun wrapping it up as always. And that is going to do it for this edition of Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Want to thank Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover. Want to thank Mark, as always, for joining me, and want to thank you, the listeners, for listening.